Many people wisely do not stop planning for their later years after they've taken care of their financial planning, their legal planning, meaning their will, their power of attorney, their healthcare advance directive, maybe a trust. But they go a step further, as I wish more people did, and they make plans for their burial or for cremation when that time comes. It's something we will all need. The benefits are obvious when you think about the stress and the burden that you take off of your loved ones who will be grieving and who are going to have to, in a very short period of time, figure out what kind of burial arrangement you wanted, get the word out to people through an obituary, get the flowers, everything else. So there's that aspect of saving them that burden by planning ahead. But there are also legal and financial implications from how you do your planning ahead for your burial or your cremation. My name is Patrick Cawley. I'm with Keystone Elder Law in Mechanicsburg, Pennsylvania, and this topic comes up all the time, both with proactive estate planning, but also in the context of somebody needing to go into a nursing home and having Medicaid pay for it. Funeral planning is a big deal. So the financial and legal implications are this. I very often see people have some small life insurance policy. Maybe it's worth $5,000, $10,000, $20,000. And their whole intention in having that policy is to have it pay out so there will be quick money that won't have to be tied up in probate. It'll just be paid out and it will be available there for their funeral. Here's the downside of having a life insurance policy with your intention for it to pay for the funeral. Number one, as people get older, maybe they're not as good or as organized as they once were with their finances. They might just miss a premium or start missing all the premiums, and so the life insurance policy ceases to exist. So then your funeral is not paid for the way you think it is. A bigger problem is when you have to go into long-term care and have Medicaid pay for it. Medicaid looks at everything you own, and they have strict financial guidelines for what you're allowed to own. And if you have this policy that can be cashed in for a certain amount of money, then you either have to surrender the policy, again, there goes the way that you were going to pay for your funeral, or else you have to transfer ownership of the policy to somebody else so that it's not in your name. And that transfer can be a gift in the eyes of Medicaid that causes a penalty period where you have to privately pay for your care. So this is just not the best way to do it. There's a better way. The best way to plan your funeral ahead of time, not only for the emotional welfare of your family, but also for the legal and financial implications of it, is to go to a funeral director and talk about an irrevocable burial reserve. So this is money you put into an account. It's very much like a life insurance policy, but you can lock in a certain amount of money, and the funeral director is really counting on the company that has that policy to grow the money to account for inflation. But that's not your problem anymore. You've locked in a certain price. Now there's certain things that will be outside the control of the funeral home when the day comes for them to provide their services, such as the cost of publishing an obituary in the newspaper, whatever the cost of flowers might be. But a lot of the other things that go into a funeral are fully within the control of the nursing home, and they can lock in a price for you. By putting that money aside in an irrevocable burial reserve, if you ever have to have Medicaid pay for long-term care, Medicaid will overlook that whole amount of money in there. So unlike the life insurance policy with a cash value where it has to be surrendered, you can leave that money in an irrevocable burial reserve and still get Medicaid to pay thousands of dollars a month for your care. So how much can you set aside and still get Medicaid? In Pennsylvania, that is determined county by county. So if you have to reduce your assets, say from $100,000 down to a very small amount in order to get Medicaid to pay for your care, you better believe I'm going to recommend you set aside money in an irrevocable burial reserve, because that gets you a little closer to eligibility financially, and it's money that will not be touched by Medicaid. And when whatever money is not used on your funeral, you list a beneficiary, such as a child or children, and the money gets paid out to that beneficiary free of Medicaid and free of any inheritance tax in Pennsylvania. So the attractiveness of using an irrevocable burial reserve, working with a funeral director to make all of your plans, really just keep mounting. And that's the way to go, not just having your own freestanding life insurance policy. If you have questions about this, please ask questions in the comments or reach out to me, info@keystoneelderlaw.com. If you need any recommendations, depending on where you live, where your funeral might happen, I'd be happy to send you in the right direction to make those plans.